What if things were a little tough for you and decide to take on a side job as a maid? You moved into a mansion where no maid ever lasted more than a week, and you suddenly discovered why. Would you stay and face the danger, or run like everyone else? Mike Oak, one of Abuja's most powerful businessmen, had a life many envied: mansions, fleets of luxury cars, an influence that stretched from Aso Rock to the oil companies in Port Harcourt. But when he married Lillian, a stunning woman with a sharp tongue and even sharper eyes, whispers began to follow them everywhere. Many wondered if she truly loved him, or if she had simply mastered the art of marrying into wealth. What no one could ignore, however, was the trail of dismissed maids she left behind. In less than a year, not one domestic staff had lasted more than 2 weeks. Jenny, a 35-year-old woman from Bainway, stood in the marbled hallway of Mike's Maitama mansion clutching a small bag of clothes. She had heard the stories about Lillian, how she would scream at maids for a wrinkle on a bedsheet or fire them for walking too loudly. Still, Jenny needed the job desperately. Years ago, when Jenny was still young, she fell pregnant out of wedlock and gave birth to twin boys. Her parents, ashamed and disappointed, rejected her, while the father of her children, who had promised her marriage, denied the pregnancy and vanished without a trace. From that moment, Jenny was forced to fend for herself, taking on menial jobs just to keep her boys fed. Leaving the twins in the care of a trusted friend, she set out in search of work as a maid. That was when she stumbled upon the vacancy at Mike's mansion. She desperately needed the money to provide for her children and still held onto her dream of one day going back to school. As Lillian approached, her high heels clicking like a judge's gavel, she gave Jenny a slow, assessing look. "We'll see how long you last," Lillian said with a faint smirk before walking away. Jenny swallowed hard but kept her gaze steady. She wasn't planning on leaving anytime soon. Jenny's first day was nothing short of a battlefield disguised as house chores. Lillian barked orders from the dining room, changing instructions mid-task and criticizing everything Jenny touched. "Why is the floor still wet? Do you want me to slip and break my neck?" she snapped, though Jenny had only mopped seconds ago. Jenny took a deep breath, forcing a polite tone. "Sorry, Ma. I'll dry it immediately." By evening, Lillian summoned Jenny to her room and inspected the neatly ironed clothes. She picked up a blouse, frowned, and tossed it aside. "Do you call this ironing? If I were your employer in the village, you'd have been chased out by now." Jenny bit her tongue. In her mind, she repeated, "I will not quit. I will not quit." She smiled faintly and replied, "I'll do better, Ma." Lillian studied her for a moment, clearly irritated that her words hadn't broken the new maid. In the kitchen, the other staff, Musa the head guard and Aisha the cook, eyed Jenny with a mix of pity and curiosity. "You're the 4th maid this month?" Aisha whispered, handing Jenny a plate of jollof rice. The rest didn't even last long enough to get their first salary. Musa nodded gravely. "Madam Lillian, she doesn't like women in this house. She sees everyone as a threat." Jenny listened quietly, spooning food into her mouth. She had survived worse personalities back in her village, but there was something different here, something heavier, as if Lillian wasn't just difficult but also unsettled. "Thanks for the warning," Jenny said, "but I came here to work, and I'm not leaving until I achieve my goal." Aisha raised an eyebrow. "And what's that goal?" Jenny smiled faintly. "You'll see." Jenny rarely saw Mike during her first week. When she did, it was usually in the morning as he left for work, dressed in perfectly tailored suits. One Thursday, she passed the living room just as he was pouring himself a coffee. "You must be the new maid," he said warmly. "I hope my wife isn't giving you too much trouble." Jenny hesitated, unsure how honest to be. "She's been clear about her expectations, sir." Mike chuckled knowingly. Yes, Lillian can be intense. But Jenny noticed something in his tone, a mix of admiration and exhaustion. He glanced toward the hallway, where Lillian was speaking loudly on the phone. "Anyway, welcome. Just do your job well," he said, and walked out. Jenny watched him leave, wondering if he truly knew what his wife was like when he wasn't around. The incident happened on a rainy Saturday. Jenny was dusting the living room shelves when her elbow grazed a crystal vase. It toppled and shattered into glittering pieces on the marble floor. The sound brought Lillian running in. Her eyes widened, then narrowed dangerously. "Do you know how much that cost?" she yelled. Jenny instinctively bent to gather the shards. "I'm sorry, Ma. It was an accident." "Accident?" Lillian's voice rose, echoing off the high ceilings. "That vase was from Italy. Worth more than your entire year's salary." Jenny froze, her heart pounding. "I'll pay for it," she said quietly, even though she knew it would take months. Lillian stared at her in surprise, then scoffed. "We'll see if you can." Jenny cleaned the mess in silence, but in her mind, she vowed she wouldn't give Lillian the satisfaction of seeing her quit. Jenny often worked late into the night, tidying the kitchen after dinner. One evening, while wiping the counters, she heard Lillian's voice coming from the garden. The tone was different, low and tense, unlike her usual confident sharpness. Jenny peeked through the window and saw Lillian talking to a tall man in a black jacket. The man's face was partially hidden, but his posture was intimidating. "You know what I came for, Lillian," the man said. "Don't make me come back." Lillian's voice trembled slightly. "I just need more time." Jenny stepped back before she was spotted, her mind racing. Who was the man, and why did Lillian, who commanded the entire household with iron authority, sound so afraid? The next morning, Jenny casually mentioned the man to Musa, pretending she was unsure of what she'd seen. Musa's expression darkened immediately. "Jenny, if you value your job and your safety, stay out of Madam's private matters." The last maid who asked too many questions disappeared overnight. The man's name was Keen. Musa told Jenny about how Lillian instructed him to always open the gate for Keen whenever he comes, and that he was just a friend. But deep down, Musa stated he knew Keen was no ordinary friend. Jenny raised an eyebrow. "You mean the last maid disappeared?" Musa shrugged. "All I know is she didn't come back for her belongings." The warning was clear, but Jenny's curiosity burned stronger. She nodded as if she understood, but inside she thought, if Lillian has a secret, maybe that's why she's so guarded. And maybe I can use it to protect my position here. To Jenny's surprise, Lillian was unusually pleasant that day. She complimented the neatly arranged flowers in the foyer and even thanked Jenny for preparing her tea exactly the way she liked it. "You're learning fast," Lillian said, almost smiling. Jenny returned the smile cautiously. "Thank you, Ma." But Jenny knew better than to believe the storm had passed. Lillian's moods shifted like Abuja's weather, unpredictable and often dangerous. Still, Jenny decided to use the opportunity to study her more closely. "Ma," she said gently, "you seem tired lately. Maybe you should rest." Lillian's eyes flickered, but she didn't answer. Instead, she simply sipped her tea and stared out the window. Late one afternoon, a courier arrived with a small, unmarked package. Jenny signed for it and brought it to Lillian's room. The moment Lillian saw it, her expression hardened. She snatched it from Jenny and locked the door behind her. Minutes later, Jenny heard muffled voices, Lillian's and a man's, though no one else had entered. When Lillian finally emerged, the package was gone, and her hands were trembling. "Next time, don't open my door without knocking," she said sharply, though Jenny hadn't. Jenny murmured an apology, but her mind was already piecing things together. Whatever was in that package, it wasn't something Mike knew about. That evening, Mike came home earlier than usual. Jenny overheard him asking Lillian about the courier. "Just some personal items," Lillian replied smoothly. Mike nodded, but his eyes lingered on her longer than necessary, as if weighing her words. Jenny watched from the hallway, noting the subtle tension between them. Lillian might have been a master at controlling the staff, but when it came to her husband, there was a different dynamic, one where she was careful, almost cautious. Jenny stored that observation away, knowing it might be useful later. One night, loud voices erupted from the master bedroom. Jenny froze midway through polishing the staircase railing. "You can't keep secrets from me, Lillian," Mike's voice boomed. "I'm your husband." Lillian shot back, "And I'm your wife, not your prisoner." The sound of something breaking followed. Jenny kept her head down when Mike stormed past her moments later, his jaw clenched. Lillian emerged minutes after, her eyes red but defiant. She caught Jenny staring and snapped, "What are you looking at? Go and finish your work." Jenny obeyed silently, but inside, she was more convinced than ever Lillian's secret was tearing this marriage apart. A week later, Lillian dressed in a sleek black gown and told Jenny she wouldn't be home for dinner. "Don't wait up," she added. Jenny watched from the upstairs balcony as Lillian was picked up by the same tall man from the garden. Jenny's instinct screamed that something dangerous was unfolding. She considered following them but decided against it. If she played her cards wrong, she could lose not just her job but possibly her safety. Instead, she made a mental note to question Aisha, the cook, the next morning. Aisha seemed to know more about Lillian's movements than anyone else in the house. Over breakfast, Jenny casually asked Aisha if she knew the man who had picked up Lillian. Aisha hesitated before answering. "His name is Keen. He's not a good man. Madam used to know him before she married Oga Mike. Since then, he comes around, and after he leaves, Madam is always in a bad mood." Jenny nodded slowly. "Do you think Oga Mike knows?" Aisha shook her head. "If he did, there would be trouble. Big trouble." The confirmation made Jenny more determined. If Lillian was entangled with a man like Keen, the stakes were far higher than she thought. The next time Keen came to the house, Jenny lingered nearby, pretending to arrange flowers. His voice was calm but laced with menace. "You know the deadline, Lillian. I won't warn you again." Lillian's reply was low, almost pleading. "I just need a little more time." Jenny's grip tightened on the vase she was holding. This was more than casual visits. This was blackmail. As Keen walked past her toward the door, he gave Jenny a long, knowing look, as if warning her to stay out of it. But Jenny wasn't the type to back down. Not when someone's life, and possibly her own, was hanging in the balance. Lillian's hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the kitchen counter. Her voice barely above a whisper. "Jenny, before I married Mike, I worked for a man in Port Harcourt. A man you don't say no to. I made a mistake, and I've been running from it ever since." Her eyes darted to the doorway as if expecting someone to overhear. Jenny leaned closer, lowering her voice as well. "What kind of mistake?" Lillian hesitated for a long moment, then said, "The kind that can destroy a marriage and ruin lives." Jenny opened up to Lillian about her life, her struggles as a single mother, her 2 children, and her dream to earn enough money to return to school. From that moment, their conversations grew more frequent and heartfelt. Maybe they had seen the same darkness in this house and chosen self-preservation. But Jenny wasn't built that way. The next morning, Jenny found Lillian at the breakfast table, untouched coffee in front of her. "I'm going to help you," Jenny said without preamble. Lillian frowned. "Help me? How? You don't know who you're dealing with." Jenny's eyes hardened. "Then I'll find out." Lillian wanted to argue, but the quiet determination in Jenny's tone stopped her. For the first time in months, a sliver of hope flickered in Lillian's eyes. Jenny began her mission by shadowing Keen from a distance. When his SUV pulled out of the compound where he stayed, she hired a Kiki driver to follow at a discreet pace. Abuja streets were alive with the blare of horns and hawkers weaving between cars, but Jenny's focus stayed locked on the black vehicle. Every turn he made, she made. Every stop, she noted. By sunset, Keen parked at a rundown building in Garki. Jenny slipped closer, hiding behind a roadside kiosk. She saw him enter with 2 men carrying duffel bags. The air around the place felt tense, dangerous. Jenny quickly jotted down the license plate and the address in a small notebook. She didn't know exactly what she'd stumbled onto, but her gut told her it was bigger than Lillian's secret. The next day, Jenny quietly asked Musa, the head guard, if he recognized the license plate. Musa frowned deeply. "That plate belongs to a man wanted for questioning over illegal arms deals. Dangerous man. Stay away, Jenny." She kept her expression neutral, though inside her heart raced. This wasn't just about blackmail. Keen was a criminal, and if Lillian was tied to him in any way, it could ruin everything. His eyes narrowed as he scanned her face, but after a tense pause, he simply waved her off and walked away. Jenny turned the corner, pressing her back against a wall, her hands trembling. She had gotten too close. One wrong move and Keen might have suspected her real intentions. Her mind replayed his expression, a mix of suspicion and calculation. It was a narrow escape, and she knew she couldn't afford many of those. Still, the risk only fueled her determination. She was playing a dangerous game, but she was in too deep to walk away now. When Jenny returned home, Lillian was pacing the living room like a trapped animal. "Where have you been? Musa said you left hours ago," she snapped, her voice trembling with both anger and fear. Jenny hesitated, then admitted, "I followed Keen. I needed to know more about him." Lillian's eyes widened in horror. "You followed him? Are you insane? If he even suspects you, he'll come after you. He's not bluffing when he makes threats." Jenny. Jenny stepped closer, speaking softly. "If we keep hiding, he wins. I'm not going to let him destroy your life." Lillian's face crumpled as the weight of Jenny's loyalty hit her. "You're just a maid. Why are you doing this for me?" Jenny looked her in the eyes. "Because no one else will." For the first time, Lillian's shoulders slumped, as though someone else was finally carrying part of her burden. That night, the entire household was jolted awake by the sound of shattering glass. Jenny sat upright in her bed, heart hammering, as a brick landed on the floor beside her window. Musa and 2 guards rushed in moments later, weapons drawn, scanning the yard. "He's sending you a message," Lillian said grimly when she appeared at the door, her silk robe swaying with her hurried steps. Jenny bent to pick up the brick, finding a folded piece of paper tied to it. "Stop digging, or you'll regret it." She gripped the note tightly, her jaw clenching. This was no longer a subtle game of intimidation. It was war, and Keen had just made it personal. The next morning, Mike noticed the smashed window and the tired faces around the breakfast table. "What happened here?" he demanded, his tone sharp. Lillian quickly interjected, "Just a vandal, nothing serious." But Musa, unable to hold his tongue, added, "It's not random, sir. Someone targeted this house last night." Mike's gaze flicked between them, suspicion darkening his features. "Lillian," he said slowly, "what aren't you telling me?" She forced a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "It's nothing, Mike. People are jealous of us. That's all." Mike didn't look convinced. Jenny kept her head down, knowing that the full truth would explode like a grenade if it landed in Mike's lap too soon. Later that day, Jenny found Mike in his study, flipping through business documents. She knocked gently on the doorframe. "Sir, there's something you should know," she began cautiously. Mike's eyes narrowed. "Go on." Jenny chose her words carefully, revealing only that someone from Lillian's past was harassing her for money. "She's afraid you'll think less of her if you know everything," Jenny said quietly. Mike leaned back, frowning. She should know by now that marriage means facing things together. "I'll handle this." Jenny hesitated. "Please, don't confront him directly yet. He's dangerous." Mike's expression hardened. "Dangerous or not, no one threatens my wife under my roof." Jenny left the study knowing she had just set a larger storm in motion. That evening, Mike called in 2 of his most trusted security men. "Increase surveillance. I want eyes on every corner of this property," he ordered. Lillian tried to downplay the situation, but Mike wasn't having it. "If this man thinks he can intimidate you, he's about to learn he picked the wrong family." Lillian avoided his gaze, afraid that her husband's idea of handling things might backfire. Jenny watched from the sidelines, torn between relief that Mike was taking action and fear that Keen might escalate his threats. In her mind, the only safe way forward was to gather enough evidence to put Keen away for good. The breakthrough Jenny had been working toward took a huge hit 2 nights later when she reached into her bag for her phone and found it gone. Panic rose in her chest. The phone contained weeks of recordings, photos, and notes. She searched her room, the kitchen, even the laundry area, but it was nowhere to be found. When she told Lillian, her face went pale. "Keen has it. He must have taken it the night he came," Lillian said in a whisper. Jenny's stomach twisted. Without that phone, their leverage was gone. And worse, Keen now knew exactly what she'd been doing. Jenny's fears were confirmed the next morning when a text came from an unknown number. "Stop digging, or you'll end up in the river." Lillian's hands shook as she read it over Jenny's shoulder. "You see? This is why I told you to stay out of it." But Jenny's expression only hardened. If he's threatening me, it means I'm close to something he doesn't want anyone to find. That means we're on the right track. Lillian stared at her like she'd lost her mind, but deep down, a small part of her admired the maid's fearlessness. That night, Lillian sat on the edge of her bed, her head buried in her hands. "I've never had anyone stand by me like you do," she said through shaky breaths when Jenny came to check on her. "Everyone else has either used me or run away." Jenny sat beside her, gently placing a hand on her back. "I'm not going anywhere, Lillian. Not until you're free of this." Tears rolled down Lillian's cheeks. "You're just a maid. Why are you fighting battles that aren't yours?" Jenny's voice was steady. "Because when you work in someone's home, their battles become yours, especially if you care about them." Lillian's sob turned into a small, grateful smile. The next morning, Jenny laid out her idea. "We make him think you're ready to pay. Set up a meeting, but we make sure the police are there to catch him in the act." Lillian's eyes widened. "Do you know how risky that is? If he suspects anything, he won't show, or worse, he'll show with a gun." Jenny leaned forward, determination etched into her face. "It's risky, yes, but if we don't end this now, it will never end. He'll keep coming back." After a long silence, Lillian nodded slowly. "All right, let's do it." Lillian reluctantly called Keen the next afternoon, her voice trembling just enough to sound believable. "I have your money," she said into the phone. On the other end, Keen chuckled. "That's better. I knew you'd come to your senses." They agreed to meet at an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Abuja the following night. Jenny listened quietly, already mapping out the logistics in her head. After the call, Jenny contacted a trusted police officer through Moose's connections. She provided the recordings she'd backed up to her hidden USB drive. "We'll be there," the officer assured her. "But we need him to incriminate himself on site." Jenny nodded, knowing that one wrong move could make the trap snap shut on them instead. The warehouse loomed like a dark skeleton against the night sky, its broken windows staring down like empty eyes. Jenny and Lillian arrived early, Jenny carrying a bag stuffed with paper wrapped to look like stacks of cash. Lillian's hands were icy cold, and she kept glancing at the shadows. "What if they don't come?" she asked. Jenny's jaw was set. "They'll come." Minutes later, Keen's SUV rolled up, headlights slicing through the darkness. He stepped out with two men at his side, both carrying visible firearms. "Ladies," he greeted mockingly, "I hope my payment is ready." Jenny forced herself to stay calm, keeping her eyes on him while the police stayed hidden nearby, waiting for the signal. Jenny could almost feel the tension in the air. The police officers were crouched behind stacks of rusted metal inside the warehouse, waiting for Keen to incriminate himself. Keen circled the bag, lifting it slightly and smirking when he felt the weight. "I should count it," he said. Lillian's voice wavered. "You'll get what you came for. Just keep your end of the deal." That was the moment Jenny needed. She subtly pressed the button on her small recorder, ensuring every word was captured. "End of the deal?" Keen laughed. "Sweetheart, there's no end. You'll keep paying me as long as I want." His arrogance was the crack in his armor. Exactly what Jenny had counted on. Jenny took a step forward. "Not this time, Keen. You're finished." His smirk faltered, replaced by a sharp glare. "You think you can outsmart me, little maid?" he hissed, moving toward her. The two men with guns shifted, their fingers brushing their triggers. Lillian's breath caught audibly. "You've been threatening and blackmailing her for years," Jenny continued, her voice steady. "And now, everyone's going to hear it." She tapped her recorder meaningfully. Keen's eyes darkened, but before he could reach her, the sound of footsteps thundered from every side. "Police, drop your weapons." The command echoed through the warehouse as uniformed officers surged in, guns raised. Keen's bodyguards froze, hands slowly lifting in surrender. Keen turned to run but was tackled to the ground by two officers. The recorder slipped from Jenny's hand in the chaos, but the USB drive in her pocket contained all they needed. As they cuffed Keen, one officer read out the charges: blackmail, extortion, and suspected involvement in illegal arms trafficking. Lillian stood frozen, her mouth slightly open, as the man who had haunted her for years was dragged away, shouting empty threats. Jenny exhaled deeply. For the first time in months, the tension in her chest began to ease. Back at the mansion, Lillian sat on the couch, her head resting in her hands. "It's over," she whispered as Jenny set down 2 steaming cups of tea. "I don't even know how to thank you." Jenny sat beside her. "You don't have to thank me. Just live without fear now." Lillian turned to look at her, eyes glossy. "You could have walked away like all the others, but you stayed. You fought for me." Jenny smiled softly. "Sometimes, people just need someone to believe they're worth fighting for." Lillian blinked back tears. The words hit her deeper than she expected. Later that night, Mike came into the living room, having been briefed by the police. "So, this is what you've been hiding?" he asked Lillian gently. She looked at him, guilt written all over her face. "I was afraid you'd hate me if you knew." Mike shook his head. "I don't hate you. I'm angry you didn't trust me, but I understand now." He turned to Jenny, his expression softening. "And you've done more for this family than anyone else ever has." Jenny shrugged modestly. "I just did what needed to be done." But in her heart, she felt the pride of having earned not just their respect, but their trust. One afternoon, Mike called Jenny into his study. "You've been more than just an employee. You've been a protector, a friend, and a problem solver. I want to pay for your university education and also train your children in school." Jenny's eyes widened, her mouth parting in shock. "Sir, that's too much." Mike shook his head. "It's the least I can do. You've given us peace. Now it's our turn to give you a future." Jenny left the study that day with tears in her eyes, overwhelmed by the unexpected turn her life had taken. As her admission letter arrived months later, Jenny began packing her few belongings. Lillian walked into her room, leaning on the doorframe. "So, you're leaving me like everyone else?" she teased, but her eyes were serious. Jenny smiled. "I'm just going to study. I'll visit." Lillian stepped closer. "Stay until you graduate. We can arrange your classes so you're still here on weekends." Jenny laughed softly. "You really can't let me go, can you?" Lillian smirked. "Not after all the trouble I went through to keep you." Jenny's birthday came a few weeks later, and for the first time, the entire mansion was decorated just for her. Balloons lined the staircase, a massive cake sat in the dining room, and the staff, along with Mike and Lillian, gathered to sing. Jenny's hand flew to her mouth, shocked. Lillian stepped forward, handing her a neatly wrapped box. "For the woman who changed my life," she said. Inside was a delicate gold bracelet with the inscription, "Family isn't always blood." Jenny's eyes shimmered as she pulled Lillian into a hug. One night, months after Keen's arrest, Lillian woke from a nightmare, her face pale and damp with sweat. Jenny found her in the living room, wrapped in a blanket, staring into space. "He was standing at the gate," Lillian whispered, "smiling at me." Jenny sat beside her, gripping her hand. "He's not coming back. He can't hurt you anymore." Lillian nodded slowly, but Jenny could tell the fear still lingered in the corners of her mind. Some scars she knew would take longer to fade. One afternoon, a woman arrived at the gate, claiming to be Keen's sister. Musa hesitated before letting her in, unsure of her intentions. Jenny met her in the sitting room, studying her cautious expression. "I'm not here to cause trouble," the woman said quickly. She explained that she had cut ties with Keen years ago and only came to thank Jenny for helping the police end his criminal activities. "You saved more people than you realize," she said sincerely. Jenny felt an odd mix of relief and sadness. Even villains had families who mourned them. That evening, Jenny told Lillian about the visit. Lillian was quiet for a long moment before saying, "No more secrets between us, agreed?" Jenny nodded. "Agreed." From then on, Lillian shared even the small details of her life, the kind of openness Jenny never thought she'd see. The shift was subtle but powerful. Lillian no longer carried herself like someone waiting for disaster to strike. Instead, She walked with the ease of a woman who had faced her past and lived to tell the tale. One quiet evening, Lillian called Jenny into her room. "I want you to know something," she said, her tone unusually soft. "You're not just my maid. You're my sister." Jenny felt her throat tighten, unsure how to respond. "You don't have to say that," she whispered. "I mean it," Lillian insisted. "Family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who stand with you when everyone else runs." Jenny smiled through misty eyes, realizing she had found a home in the most unexpected of places. 2 years later, Jenny was still in the mansion, balancing her university studies with her role in the household. She had become part of its very fabric. Her sons now schooling and living with her, the one constant in a home that had once been in chaos. Other staff came and went, but Jenny remained. Her loyalty had turned into something deeper, something unbreakable. Lillian often joked at dinner, "I'm starting to think she's glued to this house." And perhaps, in a way, Jenny was not by force but by choice. At a high-profile charity gala, Mike took the microphone to thank those who had supported their foundation. "There's one person I must mention," he said, gesturing to Jenny in the crowd. "She's the woman who keeps our home together, the one who stood by my wife when no one else would." Applause filled the room as Jenny blushed and used to the spotlight. She caught Lillian's proud smile from across the table and felt an overwhelming warmth spread through her. Sitting on the balcony that night, Jenny reflected on everything that had happened. She had come to the mansion as just another maid, expecting to last a few weeks at most. Instead, she had faced threats, exposed a criminal, and transformed a home from a place of fear to one of laughter and love. As Lillian joined her on the balcony with 2 cups of tea, Jenny realized something profound. She hadn't just kept her job, she had rewritten her life. And in the heart of Abuja, the story of the maid who tamed the billionaire's wife became a legend whispered in social media, salons, offices, and dinner parties for years to come. Moral lesson: do not be harsh towards people. You don't know whom God has given the power to take you out of that difficult situation. Thanks for watching. Kindly tell us where you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.